folks, welcome to the Virtual Realms YouTube channel. I'm Ranger 1, and this is Kalranya. He's going to fly a Bearcat into an aerial domination battle in War Thunder. You know, one of the nice things about War Thunder is we get the opportunity to get some idea of what combat would have been like with planes like the Bearcat that actually didn't see much, if any, action during the war. It was a magnificent design for a prop-driven fighter, but timing is everything when it comes to an aircraft entering active service, and it got there a little too late to participate in World War II, and a little too early to participate in the Korean War. And then with the advent of jet fighters, well, it served its purpose, but it really didn't get a chance to shine. Which is unfortunate, because it is probably one of the best prop-driven fighter designs that Grumman ever came out with. The Bearcat can brawl with the best of them, but its strong point is really its ability to gain altitude quickly and maintain it, establishing aerial superiority and altitude advantage throughout the course of a fight. And that's exactly the type of tactic that Cal's going to use in this aerial domination match. It's one that I use myself frequently. If you control the upper airways in one of these battles, then you are in a very superior position to keep your forces alive and, more importantly, keep yourself alive through the course of the battle. And at LA7 becomes Cal's first victim of this match. You know, I don't show much in the way of arcade battles on this channel, and I don't think I've ever featured an air domination match in the entire history of the channel. The aerial domination battles in War Thunder are as much a test of endurance as anything else. You've got to keep an aerial presence for your team over the capture point the entire duration of the fight. And if at any point you don't have team members within a certain radius around that capture point, you start losing tickets quickly. So one way to ensure victory is simply to fly defensively and stay alive. Of course, ultimately you have to pick off targets of opportunity whenever possible, but if you can avoid doing so, avoid risking yourself any more than is absolutely necessary, that is a very, very effective way to win this type of match. A critical skill is to simply know when not to pursue an attack if it's not going well. Don't allow yourself to get drawn down into the general furball where you can get picked off from behind very easily by any random member of the enemy team. Cal is a firm believer in this principle as well. He picks his targets carefully, as he just did, dives in, gets a good, clean kill to thin out the enemy herd, and then pulls back up to altitude, making sure that nobody can easily get on his tail in return. Few, if any, planes in War Thunder are better suited than the Bearcat for this type of fighting. Now, sometimes these matches will become nothing more than a test of how big your hangar space is and how many planes you can throw into the match, but ultimately, it's a flawed strategy. There's always somebody out there that has more planes than you do, and they can get pretty expensive. Still, even pilots that employ this tactic do serve their purpose in these matches. There's one fella in this match that ends up with a final tally of 1 kill to 8 losses of his own, but he stayed in there for pretty much the entire match and made his contribution, but he didn't win the match. Pilots like Cal, who will not lose a plane during the entire course of the match and score a very respectable number of kills, those are the pilots that win an air domination battle. Now, Cal almost made a mistake there. He had briefly forgotten that a Peshka does have forward-firing guns, and he took a couple of hits, but nothing significant, and he's able to evade that attack without taking any significant damage. As I said before, these battles can become quite the test of endurance, so even minor damage can ultimately add up and take your plane out of the fight, which is something you seriously want to avoid. It's interesting because in an aerial domination battle, it really doesn't matter as much how the brawl is going at lower altitudes. They have to take you out if you're at a higher altitude, if they intend to win the match. If they can't get up to you without sacrificing themselves, sooner or later, you're going to win. Now, this P-51 has made himself a fairly easy target, but to claim that kill would have placed Cal at a very low altitude and in a vulnerable position, so he pulls up and goes after this BF-109 instead. Scores the kill, gains his altitude back, and is in the perfect position to maintain control of the altitudes he chooses to fight at. If he plays his cards right, he can sit at this altitude and comfortably pick off anything coming up after him. As the enemy team members struggle to get up to his altitude, they'll be bleeding off energy and speed, which makes them very, very vulnerable. And unless they choose to swing wide of the combat zone to gain altitude, to get on equal footing with Cal, well, that doesn't happen very often. It's difficult to pull yourself out of the contested airspace and maintain that kind of flight discipline. You know that you're needed over the target. So it's hard to strategically depend on the rest of your team to maintain a presence there while you gain altitude to deal with the few fighters that are overhead. But really, it has to be done, or you end up in a situation like this. I've seen bomber pilots win these matches almost single-handedly because they exercised that kind of discipline. They avoided losing their aircraft early on, swung wide of the combat zone, and while they were being ignored, got to a high enough altitude that nothing could really get to them effectively without falling prey to their gunners. The only drawback to this strategy is, well, you can get high enough that you exit the top of the contested zone. You get above, I'm guessing it's right around 5 kilometers in altitude, and suddenly your presence over the target no longer counts as holding the zone. So you can shoot yourself in the foot. You've got to hold that. The key is holding the critical altitude between 4,000 and 5,000 meters, which is significantly above the altitude the enemy spawns in at, but not so high as to be considered out of the capture zone. For a fighter pilot employing this tactic, of course, you have to, as I said before, choose your targets carefully. Build up a lot of speed in your dive, take them out, but know that if you're not going to get that target, don't engage in a turn fight. Use boom and zoom tactics, pull back up out of the battle, just like Cal's doing right now. He had 2 targets of opportunity below him, but neither one panned out. He immediately broke contact and gained altitude again. Perfect execution. One other tactic that the enemy may employ that you need to be aware of is camping your spawn-in point. It's not that far away from the combat zone. That BF-109 over there is doing exactly that, picking off people as they spawn into the match and making sure they don't ever make it to the capture zone. But Cal is going to swing over just close enough to catch his attention and get him to pursue him back into the combat zone. That allows our friendly aircraft, reinforcements if you will, to enter into the fray and help maintain air superiority in the combat space. It's going to take the BF-109 a little while to realize that Cal's a good pilot and he simply is not going to allow himself to be caught. Now, I don't know if you can see it in this replay, but that BF-109 is not the only enemy plane interested in chasing down Cal. So he's going to put his foot into it and draw them on a merry chase across the battlefield, out the other side. The only drawback to that is that he's beginning to overheat his engine, and he has to play some games with that to keep his plane from overheating and losing performance. Eventually, all of his pursuers lose interest and make their way back to the capture zone, but he's managed to keep them out of the fight for quite a while, and they've lost some significant advantages that they had from their previous positions. Cal will wisely use this time to gain some altitude and position himself to re-enter the fray. A couple of minutes later, Cal's back on station, high over the combat zone, watching for enemy pilots that are making mistakes, and it doesn't take long before his patience is rewarded. Another BF-109 is flying straight and level below him, looking for targets of his own, and he's not watching his 6. He'll pull up at the last minute, but, well, it's really too late. He had set himself up perfectly for Cal's attack. So far, the two teams have been fairly evenly matched, and neither one has made any significant gains toward capturing the target point below, but attrition is about to set in this match. It's been going on almost 14 minutes, and people are going to start running out of aircraft to spawn back in. Fortunately for Cal, that's not something he has to worry about. He's still on his first aircraft, and he's had 4 kills. He's managed to maintain nearly perfect control over the course of this battle. And even more than most War Thunder matches, controlling the airspace is your ultimate priority. There's a Bearcat down below, and that's a dangerous opponent. And it looks like he's coming up after Cal, firing madly on his way up. Cal's going to go ahead and pull up and see if he can't bleed off even more of that Bearcat speed. He's definitely got the advantage, even though the aircraft are evenly matched. I'm going to play Ring Around the Rosie for a little while, as Cal put it, and the more he can make that Bearcat turn and maneuver and try and climb, the more airspeed that pilot's going to lose, which is exactly what Cal is hoping for. When the time is right, he dives to the attack. The Bearcat below him is now an easy target and is very easily eliminated. Cal did focus a little bit too heavily on that Bearcat, though. He's got a Focke-Wulf coming up from below that he hadn't spotted earlier. Fortunately, a friendly Mustang's going to peel that Focke-Wulf off of his tail and allow him to maintain his altitude and regain positioning for the rest of the battle. It helps to have a good team covering your back. And turnabout is fair play. Cal has spent a large portion of this battle peeling enemy fighters off of his teammate's tail. It's nice to have the favor returned. That Focke-Wulf is still down there. Well, it's flown by Doki Doki, the pilot that was camping our spawn-in point. Cal's going to head in that direction, but there's also a Yak-9 down there, and that Yak-9 is on the tail of the P-51 that just helped out Cal. Going to look for a position to try and bail that P-51 out. He's being harassed from all sides, and he desperately needs some assistance. He's going to fly over the top of the Yak-9P, wait for his moment, and the Yak responds. Looks like he's going to make a fight of it. Cal wisely kept that dogfight in the vertical, avoiding getting into a turning fight with the Yak-9P. That could have been disastrous, but all has ended well. Now to look for the next target. Doki Doki's Focke-Wulf is still in the area at a lower altitude, and there's a Dornier in the same sphere of influence that looks like he wants to take a pass at Cal as well, trying to use his twin-engine fighter as in a dogfight, and that is probably not the best way to use that aircraft in this particular situation. The Focke-Wulf got taken down trying to climb up to Cal's altitude, so that frees him up to deal with the DOE 217. It's easy for him to swing around and get on the 217's tail. But before Cal can take him out, the Dornier pilot ends up suiciding himself in a head-on with a Focke-Wulf. That's okay. We're at 6 kills and doing well. Cal will pull it back up to about 4 kilometers and look for his next target. The match is starting to get interesting as pilots get closer and closer to the bottom of their flight roster. Zeros are starting to enter the match, and they can be dangerous opponents, but this one's going vertical, coming up after Cal. He doesn't get a good chance for a head-on there, and that's probably wise to avoid it. And the Zero manages to get on his tail briefly, but he's unable to capitalize on it. He just can't pull his nose up to bring his guns to bear. Cal's going to circle above him, waiting patiently for his opportunity. That Zero has other problems, however, and it looks like he's going to be engaged for the next little bit. There's a second one below Cal, however, and he's going to go into a dive and attempt to pick him off before he can get up to any trouble. He'll have to be careful, though. That first Zero is still in the air. Alright, there's his 7th kill. That Zero goes down comfortably. The first Zero is behind him, but he gets picked off. It's an IL-10 coming up, and Cal's going to take the time to make a pass on him. He's got to be careful with this and not get himself shot up. At least, not too shot up. But right now, Cal has bigger worries. You see, by keeping this plane alive so long, and combined with the fact that he took a minimum fuel load, he's just run out of gas. He's got a dead stick and a Focke-Wulf 190 coming into position below him. They are in the process of capturing the base. They are about to win if he can keep this Focke-Wulf from getting back into the capture zone. So, dead engine or not, he wings over and heads to the attack. It's Doki Doki again, attempting a head-on pass with a Spitfire, but when he pulled up from that attack, it put him into an excellent position for the gliding Bearcat to take out. That was pretty well done. If you're going to win a match like this, you might as well do it with style. So gliding above the combat zone, Cal has pulled out an 8-0 victory. Well done, sir. Very well done. That's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this match as much as I did. And until I see you again, good hunting. Thanks for watching. I hope you were entertained. If you liked the video, please remember to subscribe. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you. And I'll see you next time.